I don't perceive myself as devoid of worth, as you say. You say that at the root of emotional disorder is perceiving oneself as devoid of worth. Well, let me explain that. A lot of people wonder, how do I get from saying you don't perceive your value as being an inherent quality of being a person? You say, okay, but how do you get from that to I'm devoid of worth? That's quite a jump, don't you think? Well, let's use my iPhone here for an example. Does the iPhone have inherent worth? Well, no, it don't. It has worth as long as it's useful to me, right? And when the iPhone stops working, and it doesn't even have to stop working, that's the irony of it. It can just be outdated by 5 years. Think about that. My iPhone can just get outdated by 5 years, and then it's worthless to me. I have an iPhone on a shelf, an old iPhone. It's worthless to me. I can't even sell it. That's true. I've tried to sell that thing. I can't even sell it for $50. Nobody wants it. It's worthless. What happens is that if you take away the things that the phone can do for me, if you take those things away and you just consider the phone on its own, it's just this shell of a phone, really, just on its own, without anybody wanting it or without it doing anything for me, just on its own, weighed on its own merits. What value does it have? It has no value. It's just valueless. It's worthless. So its worth comes from all these external sources. But if you take away all those external sources and you're just left with the phone, then just on its own merits, it's completely worthless. It's devoid of worth. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about when a person perceives themselves that way, like their own value as a person has to come from external things like that. That's where all the worth comes from. That is the importance between viewing a thing as viewing ourselves as our worth coming from being inherent and our worth not being inherent. If you don't view your worth as inherent, what that means, innately means, is that all your value has to come from external things. And if you take away those external things and you just consider you on your own, we just weigh you on your own merits, there's nothing there. You're just an empty shell of worthlessness. And that all happens in a person's attitude, the unconscious attitude, most of the times, such as in the case of this person who's asking this question, because they say, I have borderline personality disorder, but I don't think of myself as devoid of worth. Well, yeah, you do, because the two things are inseparable. You can't have borderline personality disorder and have an appropriate, accurate view of worth. The two things are completely incompatible. If you had an accurate, healthy perspective on the true nature of human worth, you wouldn't have borderline personality disorder. It's as simple as that. You can't believe your worth as a person is not inherent. That is to say that it has to be earned, and at the same time, believe you're not devoid of inherent worth. That's describing an impossible scenario. Number 2, your current inability to perceive the reality that you do view yourself as devoid of worth. What is that evidence of? It's only evidence of your current inability to perceive it. That's your true attitude and belief system. You just don't realize that's your true attitude and belief system. So more work is required of you to continue thinking on this point until you can see the reality clearly. Because you can't eliminate what you can't see, right? You can't identify, address, and eliminate what you can't even see is there in the first place. Number 3, shame is the feeling of being devoid of inherent worth. So when we talk about shame, that's what it is. Shame is, I'm irrelevant and shameful, devoid of worth. We're detailing it. We're fully detailing it. But you could also just say it's shame, and that's what it is. Number 4, The person I'm replying to here described the idea of his worth as being determined by external things. And it's important to note that a person who feels that he or she has inherent worth doesn't view external things as being a factor in their worth. It seems obvious, but it's not obvious when you're coming out of these distorted belief systems. As long as you believe that your worth, that your personal worth as a person is in any way related to external things, any way, even a microscopic amount, if you believe that it is in any way related to external things, then you don't believe in inherent worth. You might think you do, but you don't. Nobody who believes in inherent value for people views external things as being a factor whatsoever in their worth as a person. Number 5, inherent means that a quality is inseparable from the thing itself. Rain is wet. So no external thing is required in order for rain to be wet. Rain just is wet. It always has been, it always will be. The two things are inseparable. Number 6, a person cannot be raised believing that their worth is dependent on external things and at the same time believe that they are inherently valuable. We're just kind of repeating what we just said, but you cannot at the same time that you believe that your worth is in any way dependent on any external thing, what people think, what you've accomplished in life or what you haven't accomplished in life, none of these things, and at the same time believe that you are inherently valuable. You're describing an impossible scenario. It's two totally contradictory things. It's an impossible combination of things. Number 7, so anybody who believes their worth is a little bit dependent on external things is no different than the person who believes their worth is a whole lot dependent on external things. Do you see that? There's no difference. If you believe that your worth is a little bit dependent on external things, that's no different whatsoever than the person who believes that their worth is a whole lot dependent on external things. That difference does not make any difference whatsoever. If you believe it a little bit, you might as well believe it completely. Both of these individuals are existent in the same fictional reality where inherent worth is completely absent. Number 8, anybody who doesn't fully accept that they have inherent worth is living with the either unconscious or subconscious idea that they're inherently irrelevant and shameful, devoid of worth, whether they know it or not. So in short, there's no believing that external things have a little bit of effect on our inherent worth, while at the same time having an accurate perspective on the true nature of our inherent worth. One either lives with the foundation concept that they are inherently valuable, or they live with the foundation concept that they're devoid of worth, and that their worth is dependent on external factors. Never both things together, not even a teeny tiny, itsy bitsy tiny little bit.
Orange Slices are brief highlights from the Last Symptom podcast. Subscribe to full audio episodes of the show on any major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Pandora, iTunes, Amazon Music, and more. While I've got you chewing on that, like this video, pretty please. Might as well press subscribe while you're at it. I bet you a nickel you know somebody who's overdue for hearing some of these things, so go on, forward this video to them.